Hi. Um, First, it took me quite a few weeks to get back to just make the first video. To be honest, this is a new adventure for me. Just like I'm asking you for this to be a new adventure for you. If you're watching this, if you're interested in this, it's because you are trying to just venture into something new. This is probably something you've never done, you've heard of, and you are maybe just curious about, and you're showing up and you are trying to see what this is about. I'm in the same place, honestly. This is not my what I do. Standing in front of a camera on a social media platform is not my thing. I do stand in front of my on a camera for my job, which is curious, and I have no problem doing that. But the moment that I know that I'm gonna be doing this, where people are gonna be watching me later on, and it feels daunting to me. So I keep putting excuses of why things are not perfect. So, why am I giving this introduction before I jump in? Because I want to set the bar as low as I can so I have no excuse to show up. So, this is my promise. The content that I will show you will be high value. If you stick with me, I promise you, I'm going to teach you some amazing things. And if this is something that you're interested on, promise you I'll show up once or twice a week. I'll make a video, whether it's short, whether it's long. Most likely it'll be long because I tend to go on tangents, but those tangents tend to be about things that just come up on the side and I think it's interesting for you to know. So bear with me and let me know if that is of value. Let's jump into my computer and let's see what I'm talking about. I already have Excel open. And this is just normal Excel. And I just have this AdventureWorks sales Excel sample data. And you can find this online. Just go to Google and search for AdventureWorks Sales XLSX. Go to the GitHub repository and download it. And you can just follow along. So from here, to enable content, this is safe and it's just a normal Excel file. One of the things that you will notice in this file, if you're not familiar with tables in Excel, this is one of those tangents that I said earlier. It's just another type of object in Excel. Excel has different hierarchy and types of objects. So if you think about Excel file itself is an object. Then within Excel, you have worksheets. Within worksheets, you have cells or ranges of cells, which is just grouping of cells. And then you could have cell that you name. So I could take this names, ranges of cells, go up here and give it a name. So name cells, for instance. So if I step away from it, the name disappears. If I step into it, there's nothing. But if I go here, I could see that name cells. So now I can reference that. So a name range is nothing more than a group of cells that you have assigned a name to that group. Then another type of more advanced name ranges is tables, and they come with specific configurations that allows them to have even more advanced settings. So I'm not gonna go too deep into what those settings are. Just know that they are treated differently than any other objects in Excel. They literally are treated as if they were, well, not literally, almost as if they were a table from a database. So in the sense that they are not treated cell by cell. By default, each column is treated as a unit as opposed to each cell being a unit. So we'll go more in detail in future videos. Again, one of those tangents that I said I normally get to, but that's not what you came. That's not what this video is about. This video really is about Power Query. The reason why I'm saying that is because when we go into Power Query, it will matter if we are in a table, if we are not in a table. That's why I wanted to mention that. So generally, just to go to Power Query, you would go here And from regular Excel, if you've never used it, you probably will start using it in your current environment, in your current worksheet or your workbook. And from there, you will go to um, data, and then from table or range. So when I created that range, that's one way for me to access it. Where this table is another way to access it. If I don't have a range on a table or a table, it will automatically create a table. For instance, if I just select this range here and I say from range, from table or range, it will go through the process of creating this as a table for me. And if I click OK, just see it created it. And now in my other window, Power Query opened. So now Power Query is open. Now I'm just going to exit this and I'm going to discard that. And I'm going to delete this because we don't need that. The other way is if I actually had a range selected, and it has to be the whole range, and I go back and do from table or range, you see it didn't ask me to create the table because a range was selected. So this is the second way that you can do it. And this is generally, if you're not used to using tables, this is the safest way to accessing Power Query and to working with the data in Power Query. Later on, I'll explain why, but just trust me. If you are going to start using Power Query with data that you already are using with a with setup that you already have there, and you just want to consume that data, that is the safest thing to do. And let's say that you already have a data set that, let me insert a few rows up here and a few rows here. So let's say this is your data set. This is how it's set up. And it is not a table, or maybe there's some additional data here. So A, B, C. Just want to create something so we can see additional data. So let's say that this is, it doesn't matter what it is. This is the data that you have. It has some header information. It has additional data. Maybe there's some data over here that you also have. If you click, if you want to see all of this together and you just click on all of this and then you do add to table, it will do what it did before, which is it's going to create a table out of this. And sometimes it won't create a table because there is already a table there. So that may create some issues. So what do? The best thing to do is look at what is the possible maximum size of your range. There are ways how you can create a dynamic range, but that's out of scope for what we're trying to do here. Just the simplest thing to do is just create something that encompasses, well, this is pretty big. That is bigger, a range that is bigger than your data set. So let's go all the way down, home. And let me try to name this range 2 and see what happens. So I'm able to name this range. And now let's go do from range of table. So now you see, I'm able to consume that whole range and I didn't have to convert anything to a different format. The data stays as it is. Imagine that this is a financial model that has formulas, formatting. You don't want to mess that up. People have worked in that so hard to get that as is. The worst thing that you can do is trying to create some sort of automation, some cool thing that you're learning by messing that up. Do not touch that. This is a very safe way for you to do this. So do this approach and you should be safe. Now, with that being said, now that we're here, let's just take a quick exploration through what Power Query actually is. This is where you have your queries, and you can think about Power Query is a a live connection to the source information, and it is a read-only connection to that information. So anything that you do here will never touch back to that data. So you can make any changes that you want to make here, and you're safe. There's no way for you to alter the data in the source system, which is really good because this read-only connection gives you the ability to just experiment without affecting that source system. And as you make any changes in this table, those changes get recorded as step. So if you think how you normally work in Excel, you have to have a sheet of steps that you normally do, especially when you are taking over somebody else's work. They have to literally write down every step, go to cell C5, put this number, then go to cell X25, copy that lookup, all the way down, and then verify this. You literally have to go through that. Go to this folder, get this report, copy, paste it over here. You know what I'm talking about. In Power Query, you're doing all of that through a series of steps that are recorded. Just think about like scripts that are recorded for you. And once you do those steps, the system is going to execute those steps on its own after the fact. So what you're doing here is just seeing a preview of those steps. So if you see here, it says column profiling based on 1,000 rows. What this means is for each of these tables, it's picking up the first 1,000 rows, if it has more than that, and then it's showing you a preview of that. And all of the transformations that it's doing is showing it here. So let's say I go into one of these tables. I don't have access to this because this is connected to a remote, to somebody else's connection. So as you see here, this person is who created this, this Power Query tables. So they connected to the source and they created this, and then they imported it into Power Query. But this also shows us something else. Just because I have the data that is loaded into Power Query, if I send this data to somebody else and that person doesn't have access to the source, I can consume the data that was refreshed, but I cannot refresh that data myself. Not only that, I could see what the query are, the steps are, but I cannot refresh those steps. So I am literally privy to only the data that was materialized in the Excel file. So one thing that we will do so we can actually see some of these things is I'm going to go back to Excel. So let's close this out. And we're going to disconnect all of these items. I didn't want to load this, so let me disable load on that table and delete this. And then what I want to do, and let me put this back to where it was. So I'm just deleting this so I can put this table to where I don't have to do that, but I just want to put it to a initial state. Then if I right click, I can just go to table and I want to unlink from data source. And I'm gonna do that to all of them. Okay. So now these tables are not related to that data source. So I can just go here and delete all of this, not including the one that I created. So those sources now are not in our files, and I don't need them because now these tables were disconnected from the source. So what I want to do now is take these tables and push them back into Power Query as my source. So let's just go back from this one and let's do what we originally were going to do, which is from table. And this is our first true Power Query loading of data. It is from our current workbook. Later on, I'll show you how to do it from other workbooks, from CSV files, from SQL. But for now, this will suffice for what we're trying to do. So as you can see, when we loaded it, it did two steps for us. One, it loaded it from the source, which is the current workbook, Excel.current workbook. And then it recognized the data types based on the profiling of that first 1,000 records. And that is important to note because sometimes if you have a data set that is very large, you may have let's say the customer key, it has some keys that are alphanumeric, but most of them are not. If that happens, and let's say that alphanumeric value is number 10,000, when it goes through the profiling, it will see that everything that it profiled is a whole number. So it would show its whole number. But when you go to refresh, it's loading all of the data. And when it's loading all of the data, it's profiling all the data to ensure that the data type is the accurate data type. So Power Query actually does data validation when it's loading. So if it is not the data type that it should be, your query will fail. And you will go back here, you will look at the data, you will see that everything is okay, and you don't know what's going on. Many times when that happens, you just want to go in here and do column profiling based on entire data set. That will actually go and read your entire data set. Be careful doing that, because if your data set is actually larger than your the capacity that you have in Excel, it will crash Excel. Don't do that. So many times what you want to do, if that is the case, and you will see sometimes where that error happens, just to be safe, change your data type to text and see what happens. So you could change it to text just by doing this, and I can replace current. If you do add new, it's still going to fail because it's first going to load the data. Let's do this. So it's first it's going to do this step, which is convert it to number, and then it's going to convert it to text. Well, if it's going to fail converting it to number, so that's not going to work. And then it's going to try to convert it to text. So again, I digress. Just know that that can happen sometimes. But then let's say that while we're here, I don't want any values where the customer key is invalid. So I'm just going to remove anything that is -1. And also maybe I just want customer from a specific region. Maybe I just want Canada, the United States, and Australia. And this is, in Excel, you probably would be, deleting these records. Let's say that I also don't care much about, I have the customer key. I don't care about the customer ID. So maybe I need to delete the customer ID. So this is the type of steps that you normally would be doing in Excel, just, selecting some columns, deleting those columns, selecting some rows, deleting those rows, or maybe actually filter, sorting, then selecting, then deleting. So in here, you could do that a lot quicker. Now, another thing that we could do is, just do like something similar to VLOOKUP, etc. But the reason I was showing that didn't really matter what the steps were. It's just so I could show you what the steps were here. So every step that we made, I can see it here. Not only that, but I can see the exact order in which I did those steps. So maybe I decided that because of the transformations that I'm doing, I need to first remove columns before I do filter. And there could be a specific reason why I need to do that in my data, or vice versa. First, I need to sort before I filter, whatever the case may be. Just know that those are things that you can just reorder here very easily. Or maybe I need to change the filters. After I filter, I didn't want -1. Maybe I don't want something else. So I could just change the filter right here. know that most of the filters you're able to go and change them like this. Some filters, like in this case of remove columns, don't give you that option to go in and alter them. So in that case, you just need to go and delete the filter and add them some other way. So that's something to be aware of. So we went through queries, we went through apply steps. Another thing that you can do while you're here is you can, if you right click, you have additional options, whether it is to apply properties, like, giving details of what your query is. That's really important for you to document as you go along. Fast load, this is just something that allows you, when you load into Excel, it freezes Excel in order to allow you to load the query a lot faster. So if you're having query performance issues when it's loading, that's something that you can do, and it generally improves the performance. One thing that I recommend is, as you are naming your queries and your tables, to make sure that you use no spaces or underscore on the name of your queries. It just makes it a lot easier for readability. For instance, in this case, if we look at this name here, it has a, hopefully you can see that it has a hashtag, quotes, and then the name. And this is kind of this the escape sign, the escape to be able to put special symbols. But if that name only had, let me rename it to just put an underscore in between the name. And then if we go back to the next step where it's being referenced, then it removes those signs. So it's a lot easier to reference these items so you don't have those extra characters. So I would just get in the habit of doing that. So just, some quick advice that works for me, maybe works for you as well. So the we already talked about the pain. We haven't talked about it, but this is the formula bar where you see everything that's going on. And as just like the tables themselves, or the queries, have the ability for you to notate them and add description, you also have the same thing with the each step. So we can go into each step and add specific descriptions of why this step is what it is, and why you're making the decision to do this way. So I hope that this shows you the value of this tool, because not only gives you the ability to do the exact same work repetitively every time consistently, but it also allows you to document as you're going along. Because honestly, you may be doing this right now and know why you're doing it. When you come back in 3 months, you won't remember why you did it, especially once you've automated this work and you're not doing it 3 times a week. You will forget it because you have gone into bigger and better things. You probably got that promotion. So you're not doing this anymore. And you need to remember why you did this. Don't kill yourself, plan ahead, and document. Believe me, you'll be glad you did. So with that in mind, um, just make sure that you do that. And one of the other things is, when you start documenting this way, if you go to advanced settings up here, which is something that hopefully you'll get more into. Actually, let me just add something really quick. So properties, removed a column. Obviously, that's what we did, but just wanted to show. Now that comment shows in here. So this advanced editor is where all of the steps that you do for a specific query shows up. The beauty of this is that you could take this, copy it, and paste it in another file, and it would work the same exact way, as long as you have the same data in that file. So it's very portable. And it allows you to, especially if you're working with databases and multiple people in the team have access to that, you could say share the file. But a lot of times you don't need to share the whole file. Maybe there is one specific query, one specific process that you use in multiple places. This is one quick way for you to just share that one process. So you don't have to just go and you know replicate the full thing. Just take the one thing that you need. So With that being said, just on the top here, we have some like where you want to close. You select the ways that you want to close the file. So close and load is going to load any items that basically is going to do what it says, close and load every item. If you have already loaded an item, the settings of that item is saved. Let me just do this, and it's probably easier if I explain it this way. Do close and load to, and I'm going to create connection on this one. Then I'm going to go to another one. I'm going to load it because if I try to explain it, it's not going to make a lot of sense unless you see it. So now I have two tables here. Then I'm going to go back here to close and load again, which I could do from here as well. So either way, close and load. See that although I press close and load, the one that I selected to only create connection didn't load. Only the one that was that I had not made a selection loaded. So the default setting is that it will load the data the first time. But once you set a default behavior, that is the behavior that is going to happen every time unless you change the behavior. And to change that behavior, like I did earlier, you just go here to load and then do only create connection, click OK. And now that connection is no longer there. I can go now and delete this worksheet. And if I wanted to enable the connection, just do load to. And then while we're here, you can see I can load it back as a table. I can load it as pivot table. And what it does is it still just creates a connection, but now that connection is available in the pivot table ribbon for me to create pivot tables with that without the data actually being loaded into an Excel sheet. So that's really cool. The same thing with pivot chart, just like pivot table. And then the option that we have right now, which is have the data in Power Query, but don't actually load it into Excel. So which is what we generally do with staging queries, meaning queries that you're going to use for additional transformations, but they are not the final version of the query. Now, going back, so if I right click on any of these queries, I can just do edit, and then that will take me back um, Power Query. Then from here, we have four primary ribbons that we work with. View, we don't do much here other than set, what we want to see. These query dependencies, as your queries get very complex, is one that, or you get a lot more queries, is one that you will tend to use in order to see the lineage of your queries. But for the most part, you don't spend much time here. Add columns, this is where any transformation that you make here, it actually adds that transformation as an additional column in your query. So for example, this doesn't make a lot of sense, but let's say that this customer key, I wanted to add 100 to it. So if I go here and say add 100, it creates a new column, adding 100 to the original column. On the other side, if I went to transform and I did the same exact thing, I'm going to say add 100. It looks the same, but notice that now the addition was done in the column, the original column. So that's the simplest way to understand the difference between the transform ribbon and the add ribbon. The transform ribbon actually does a transformation in the existing object. The add column ribbon makes the transformation in a new object that didn't exist before the transformation was there. So the way to think about it is with add, you keep growing the number of objects. The transform keeps the same object and just makes the transformation on that object. It is safer, in my opinion, to do add column because you can always go back and delete the original one. But if you make transformation in the column that you in the original column, you may need that later on, and now you have to go back and do your steps in order to get that back. So until you get comfortable with the tool and what you're doing and your process, I would just do add column. It's very, it doesn't take much from the process. And as you're getting comfortable, it's just one pain point that you can avoid. And then finally, if we go back to home, you have, we've explored a few of this, but you have the close and load. If you want to refresh this is really just refreshing the preview. You can refresh the preview of the current query, or you can refresh all of them. The advanced option, we already looked at this. You can set up some properties here, like the fast load for all of the queries, where before we looked at fast load for just one query when we went to properties. So this is just applying to one query. And then some of the other ones is choose columns and or search. If you have a query that is really long, this is a really easy options to go to columns. You could also do Control G, and that will just pop that up, and then you can search for your columns there. Um, this will go through some of these options in subsequent lessons, but those are some of the general ones that you will go through. Merge and append, these are really cool, that will save you so many hours on your work, especially if you do a lot of copy, append, and just VLOOKUPs. This is where your time is going to be saved, so many hours. And then parameters. This is something that, or when you start using parameters, you really start changing the way that you think about doing your workflow into a more modular approach, where you start using variables to control your workflow versus having to go and change things in each query in the code itself. So this is another part that is not necessarily that is advanced, because it really isn't that advanced. It's just that our way of thinking needs to shift in order to understand the value of that. But this is a very great feature that, again, can just make your life so much easier. And then the new source is just how you connect to data. So whether you want to connect to files, as you can see here, you can connect to text file, JSON, XML, folders, SharePoint folders. You can connect to databases, whether that is Access databases, SQL, IBM DB2. I mean, just about anything. You can connect to web sources. You can connect to SharePoint list. You can actually, this is super cool. You can connect to your Outlook email, and you can extract your Outlook attachments, and you can do transformations on those Outlook attachments. So think about those files that you get from someone every Thursday. So you can do the same exact thing on that file. You could operationalize that and never have to touch that file. All you will have to do is create an Outlook rule that when you receive that file is going to a specific folder. By the way, if I were you, I would set up a archive rule on that also. So you keep it for at least a year, however you may need that file for your refreshes. But now that file is saved in that Exchange server. You can refresh from there anytime you need, and you save yourself how much time? So, anyways, again, going on tangents, I apologize for that. But hopefully, although a little long, hopefully this has given you a little bit of a taste of what the tool actually can do. We didn't go in detail into any of the actual functionalities, but in the next lesson, we'll actually go into some workflows that we can do, actually going and touching and doing specific things to just get you going. If you watched till the end, thank you so much. And please click subscribe, give me feedback, tell me if this is something that, works for you. And hopefully, we can see each other on the next episode, and the one after that, and the one after that. And you can give me feedback of what's working and what is not, what you would like to learn. not just about Excel, but other tools. I'm really excited to do this, to learn with you as I learn this new experience for me. So thank you for sticking with me. Have a wonderful day. God bless you. Bye.